Hello, welcome to week 4 of Adapt and Root. I'm so glad you're here. This is Karina Snow, Healing Arts Maven. So today we are talking about resiliency, we're talking about stress reduction. We'll reflect again on beliefs around self care. We're going to talk about some self care rituals, some foods, simple foods for resilience, and we're going to talk about emotions and emotional reactions to situations. Okay, so let's jump in. So, the first thing that I want to talk about is this category of herbs called adaptogens. And maybe you've heard about adaptogens. They, simply put, they help us adapt to stress better in our lives. And so by taking these herbs, and you can think about this taking it over time, this is not necessarily like you'll adapt to stress in that second better, but what I find is that I do when I take these herbs, but it's not like a nervine like skullcap or relaxing like chamomile. It's helping you over time to adapt to stress. If you're hearing that banging, we're having compost delivered, so sorry about that. Never a dull moment here in the woods. So I find adaptogens pretty easy to integrate and actually pretty gentle. So I'm just going to talk about a few today. You may have heard of some of these. Some of them may be new to you. So some of the mushrooms are adaptogens, and mushrooms are great. You can, you can actually use medicinal mushrooms in soups. You can, find maitake, shiitake mushrooms. You can add them. You can make a soup broth out of them. You just, simmer them in some water, and you have that medicinal mushroom property. It's excellent. Actually, if you get excited about mushrooms, then let me know. I'll give you more information on them. But you can find sources where you can just purchase dried mushrooms and just add them to a soup stock. They're great to add to your bone broth also. It's like double whammy. You get all that amazing collagen and nutrients, and then you also get these immune boosting properties and adaptogen properties. So mushrooms are exciting. It's like a whole other course in and of itself. So I'll just touch on a couple here. So reishi mushroom is particularly helpful for immunity. You've probably heard of this. And it is an adaptogen. It doesn't taste great. I kind of like the taste, but it's bitter. It's not the worst of the bitters, but it is a little bitter. And so usually when I have people do reishi, it's in like a capsule form. If you have an herbalist that you trust in your area, there's a way of working with reishi in like a double extraction method. There's different ways of processing these herbs. Some are a little more complicated than others. Reishi tends to be one of those that I just have people buy the prepared form. So I'll put in your resource handout a couple of good forms for reishi. Reishi is an interesting one. I used it actually all through my first pregnancy because an herbalist that I worked with had written about it being used to enhance the spiritual connection of your child, actually, if used during pregnancy. And I just thought that was fascinating. And I had a really healthy pregnancy, healthy babies. So reishi is very cool. You can also buy from like Mountain Rose Herbs. You can buy a little bag of like reishi strips. So it's the mushroom, has been dried and then like cut into slices, and you can add those slices to a bone broth. And within a soup or a bone broth, the other flavors kind of, mesh with it, so it doesn't have so much of that bitterness. I will also, if you, really like doing these home projects through the winter months, what I'll do is I'll get those reishi slices from Mountain Rose Herbs, and I'll put it in the crock pot and fill the crock pot with water, and I'll just keep it on low for like 6 or 8 or more hours and just kind of decoct it that way, and then just sip it as a tea, and I add honey to it. So that's reishi. Reishi is is a really great one to know about. There are also some, and again, I'll put this in the resource list. There are some great mushroom companies that have mushroom supplement companies where there's reishi blended with some other mushrooms. So those are good too. Always with these, please check with contraindications. If you are on meds, it's always great to just check with your doctor if you're curious, or you can look up contraindications really easily online if you want to double check that stuff. Okay. So another great herb is astragalus, and astragalus is a fairly mild flavor. So if you get excited, about experimenting with whole herbs, you can also order that, like from Mountain Rose Herbs, and it comes in these slices. I like to call them little tongue depressors. I used to just suck on them. When I met my husband, Tyler, he had these jars of all these Chinese herbs, and a bunch of them were just ones that you could put into your mouth and either chew, because it had been almost like dried, like cooked and dried, or suck on. So with astragalus, you can actually suck on these. But what we usually do is put it in a pot of water and simmer it for 20 minutes or longer. You can put a little another herb that comes in that form of like being sliced and looks a little like a tongue depressor is licorice. A little licorice can get added to that too. But usually you're going to see astragalus in a formula. And so with those herbal formulas that I mentioned last week or the week before, some of them have astragalus in them. And it's a really great Chinese herb. It's used for immunity over time to kind of build your immunity and build your qi. So if you see astragalus, astragalus, if you see astragalus, it's a really great safe herb. I use it with my children. A lot of times if herbalists are mixing elderberry, they'll add some astragalus and maybe some cinnamon or ginger to their mix. So astragalus is a great one, and it's also, we're talking about adaptogens here, so it is also an adaptogen. A really easy adaptogen to work with, and one that I would recommend you start with, is Tulsi, because there is a company, I'm sure you've seen it in like the natural food store. There's all the different like herbal blend flavors that it comes with. But it's like, they'll have like Tulsi Rose or Tulsi Spearmint, and it's just tea bags. It's like these little boxes. And those are really, really nice. And I would recommend starting there. It's a great evening tea. And what I notice like with Tulsi's, I start to crave it a little bit. Like it's really a helpful herb. It's super, super gentle. It has a nice flavor. It's also called holy basil. I think I talked to you about this last week of just thinking about herbs as foods, and when sometimes if there's an alternate name like holy basil, it helps us to kind of indoctrinate that idea of like, oh, it's not a drug, it's just an additional kind of food source. So Tulsi is great. It's a really great one to start with, and it's something that you can do every day. You can also grow Tulsi in your garden really easily. And I just want to talk about one other for now. There's many more adaptogens, but these are all adaptogens that also are helpful for immunity. So chaga is also a mushroom, and chaga is a really excellent mushroom. It has many great qualities, from helping with skin concerns to helping with cancers of the skin. It is a strong immune tonic. It also doesn't have a bad flavor. I find it really pleasant. Chaga is Chaga. It's a mushroom that grows, kind of around here. It grows in Vermont. It grows in colder regions. It grows on I always forget if it's a beech or birch tree. Birch, I think. And it's like a dark kind of brownish black mushroom that's hard, and then it is kind of distilled into like a tincture form, or processed into like a powder form. So usually with chaga, I'll have people purchase a powder that's been kind of steamed, and then you can easily make just like a tea out of it. Like a French press, or I believe you can get chaga in like a tincture form also. And again, chaga is something you can find in formula combined with other mushrooms, which can be really nice too, because you kind of get this cross-pollination of all the different types of mushrooms. So what I'd like you to do with this is do a little bit of your own research. So I'll give you a couple places to start, and then I want you just to see what you're drawn to, because I find that usually works a lot better than me saying like, hey, you should definitely start with this. So again, Tulsi is a great place to start, but if you want another one, lean in a little bit more and see which one of these really speaks to you. Okay, so that's a little bit on those herbs. Please let me know if you have specific questions or if you want to dig a little bit deeper with those. Something that can be really foundational that I know we've talked about a little bit is meditation. And I just want to say a few things in regards to meditation, because there's always this I can't do that. I don't have time. And for a lot of people, when we sit down, actually our mind starts to get really active and really loud. And that is super, super normal. And it's also this kind of result of our culture. It's a lot of us are yin deficient. And so that is a big tendency with this yin deficiency. We're not that good at resting. We're not that good at staying still. We're not that good at stopping. We're always doing. If you're a parent, you likely know this. You're not just hanging out on the couch, relaxing, taking bubble baths, going on quiet walks for yourself. You're doing all of the housework. You're taking care of most of the kid stuff. You might also be working. So, there's this tendency in our culture to push and go and go and go, and that's what is rewarded. And that's very yang, which is the opposite of yin. And so when we start to get yin deficient, and I can actually tell this by looking at your tongue and the coating on your tongue. If your tongue looks like a mirror, then you have very little yin going on in your body. Again, it's really common. It's not something to freak out about. It's the result of this culture that we live in. It's so crazy. But really, the best thing you can do, if you're noticing that, if you feel like you have tension, if you feel like you can't stop, the best thing to do is roll out your yoga mat and just lie on it. Just lie on your back. Do nothing. And so teaching ourselves, relearning how to do nothing in little pieces is kind of what I'm talking about here. So meditation is not doing nothing. I mean, you have to pay attention to what your mind is doing. It really is a very active thought almost, and it's great for our cognition. It's great for our brain. So I really recommend trying to do this, even if it's only a few minutes, because it gets you in the habit of paying attention to your thoughts. And even if that's all that you're doing is oh my gosh, what exactly are my thoughts? Because I know, for myself, things have been crazy lately. There's a lot going on. And I have to stop and pay attention to my thoughts in order to be able to classify what the heck is going on, and what am I thinking, and what am I wanting to move forward with, and what's going on in my relationship, and what do I want to do with my kids for school next year. I mean, otherwise it's just a big, huge jumble. So do yourself a favor, sit, even if it's only 3 to 5 minutes, that's absolutely fine. You will notice a difference. When you sit, what you can do is close your eyes. And what I like to do is have people focus kind of on this third eye spot right here. And you're going to breathe in and breathe out. And as you do that, thoughts are going to come up. And what you can do is just notice them, watch the thoughts moving past in front of you. And your only job, if you're a beginning meditator, your only job is just to watch the thoughts moving by and not engage in them. So you're not following the traffic, you're not getting in the car, and you're not going down the rabbit hole, whatever analogy you need, to not engage in the thought. So to be able to do that, it takes active concentration, and that's all, really. And it's going to feel difficult. There's going to be a lot of thoughts in the beginning, and that is fine. That's normal. I think a lot of people think that meditation means having zero thoughts, and that is absolutely 100% not true. Okay. The other thing you can do if you were doing the meditation challenge with me, I talked about this, I think, on the first one. The other really helpful thing, I know longtime meditators and Qigong masters who did this in the beginning. So you can sit with your eyes closed and a pad of paper and a pen next to you. And you can scrawl your thought out. It doesn't have to be the whole sentence, but just a few words about what it is that you're thinking on the paper. And that writing is incredible. I think there's a lot of science behind this also, but it really does help extricate it from your mind and will kind of stop that loop going. That's why I advocate journaling or writing so much, because of this factor. Okay. Okay, so let's talk about some fun stuff. I want to talk about some rituals, some fun self-care, kind of almost spa-esque practices that you can do at home, because this is so great. You deserve this. And this is what it's all about, is like teaching our body how to relax and how to care for ourselves and love ourselves and give back to ourselves. Right? I mean, most of us have been giving and giving and giving our whole lives. And at some point, we kind of reach a wall with that. And that's when we do start to get sick. And so if we're able to halt that progress and take that time for ourselves and give back before it gets to that point, then you're going to be so much better off, and you'll be amazed at like your patience that you have after doing this, at your kindness, at how much more love you have for the people in your life. I mean, it goes back, if you feel like this is selfish, like if it's hard for you to do something for yourself, you can just think about it directly affecting the people that you live with and the people immediately in your life. I mean, it's incredible. So the first thing I want to talk about is bathing rituals. I really love water, and I advocate a lot in my practice finding ways to connect with water. And so that the ways that you can connect really easily is by bathing in your tub at home. And so one bathing, and I call it a ritual just to have some intention set around it, but I'm not even talking about like lighting candles or anything here. You can add that if you want to, but all I'm talking about is filling up your tub. And what I love for people to do is actually not make it super, super hot. Make it just a little warmer over body temperature. But if it's too hot, then your body has to kind of work to cool your body down. And so it's actually taking more energy. But if it just feels, warm and good and not hot, then your body's able to like super, super relax. So draw yourself a tub and add some Epsom salts. If you want to get fancy, you can buy some fancy Epsom salts, or you can add some Himalayan salts to your tub, whatever you like. But I really do think Epsom salts are super helpful. So they actually remineralize your body and add nutrients into your body. So it is actually doing something. Magnesium gets into the body the best through our skin. And so using Epsom salts and using like a magnesium oil is actually one of the best ways to get that into our body. And you'll notice and feel results right away. So you're going to do your bath, stay in there for at least 20 minutes. And then I ask at the end to just do a little cool. Even if you just get a cool washcloth and put it on your lower back, that's a great way to kind of help your adrenals to not just be like releasing out with, like the heat and the moisture and your sweat and everything, but it really draws it back home. So just a little bit of cool water on your lower back in the form of a washcloth is fine. If you want to get crazy, you can turn the water on cold and do your cold plunge that way. But it's a great way to end, and you won't be really, really tired afterwards also. So it really helps with that fatigue thing that happens after we take nice, long, relaxing baths. So try this idea of a bathing ritual once a week. Other things I really love, and this is going to sound kind of spa-ish, but I really love, excuse me, I'm going to plug my phone in, doing a scrub. And so you can do a salt scrub really easily. And salt is wonderful. I mean, I grew up on the ocean, and I think that energy of the ocean totally saved my life. And so I think it's incredibly, incredibly healing. And it's something that you can do really easily. So what you're gonna do is just, you can get, I like to use like a Himalayan salt, but you can just use like a regular sea salt also. And you're just gonna add some like massage oil to it. You can also add like a little coconut oil and just like mix it up in like a little cup. And then you're just gonna do, you just do a little scrub on your body. And you can do some nice things like circle your belly, you can circle your adrenal area, definitely get your legs and your feet feel excellent. But just get your whole body with this salt scrub, and then just do a hot shower afterwards. And it's excellent for, it has like this exfoliating quality, of course, but like in Chinese medicine, there's this layer of qi on the outside of our body, like it's the outermost layer of qi. It's called Wei, W-E-I qi, and qi is Q-I. And Wei qi is kind of like our interaction with the world, and it's our immunity. And so getting in touch with our skin and our outer contact with the world with something as lovely as a scrub is actually very, very helpful. If you're feeling ungrounded, if you're feeling disconnected from your body, if you're feeling dry, if you're feeling like not sensual, this is a really, really great place to start. And it's just a really loving thing to do for yourself. So do a scrub. When I used to I worked at a spa after I had my second child and I laughed because it was just a really kind of funny experience. But we did it's the only time I've ever done spa treatments for people, and we would do these Himalayan salts scrubs, and we would like wrap people up in a cocoon with like warm sheets and herbed sheets and stuff. So I mean, this is amazing stuff, and you can do this at home. Okay, so you're gonna do your scrub, you're gonna do your bath ritual. I want to talk about dry skin brushing. So if this is one of these things that it's gotten kind of popular as like a detox thing, as like a cellulite treatment. I don't really engage in that. So just know that is not the place that I'm coming from. And the place that I am coming from is that it is an anti-cancer treatment, and it moves your lymph in your body. So lymph is the system in our body that the only way that it moves is by actively moving our body in exercise, gentle movement, and massage, and this like lymphatic massage or dry brushing. So if you have issues with lymph, if you have stuff, armpits, neck, groin, if this is one of your go-to, if you've had cancer stuff come up, this is a really, really great thing to do. And it's easy. I attached a video of this lovely woman, and she's going to show you how to do your dry skin brushing. Don't make this into a big deal. Just do this right before your shower or bath. It's just a couple minutes. You can even, if you don't have a brush, you don't feel like getting one, you can use a scratchy washcloth. My mom makes these kind of like nubby knitted washcloths with like cotton wool. Even that is fine. It's dry. This is not scrubbing your body in the shower. It's really important that it's dry. So get yourself a brush or use a scratchy washcloth, and it's this motion like this. You're basically just like, doing this motion on your body. Okay. Watch the video. Do this. It's great for lymph. It's an amazing practice for your health and for your resiliency. Okay. Okay, dry skin brushing. And so a couple more things that I just want to talk about. We've talked about adaptogens, we talked about meditation, we talked about some of these rituals for your body. I have a whole course on body-based rituals, so I'm kind of like holding off on, I don't want to give you too much. So I want you to focus on the bathing, the scrubbing, and the dry skin brushing, okay? But just know that there is a lot more there. Okay, so I want to talk about some foods for resiliency and for immunity. And we've done some of these, but I want to add in just a couple more, and I'm going to give you some recipes to start with. And this is just a launching off point. I find if I give a whole formula of recipes and stuff, nobody does it. So I want you to use these as inspiration and then look at what you already make, look at what's comfortable for you, look at what you're inspired by, and move in that direction. If you love seafood, then, you know, make the coconut ginger soup with scallops. You know, if you're super excited about miso, then get into that. So, okay, so miso is the first thing we're going to talk about. Miso is amazing. It's usually made from fermented soybeans. And people are always like, oh my God, soy. Miso, you don't really have to think about it in like the terms that we think usually about like tofu and tempeh. There's been a big freak out about that and about estrogen, and honestly, like as a moderate amount for most people, it is fine. And especially with miso, it's fine. So if you know you have a reaction towards fermented foods, we can talk, but otherwise, you know, try the miso, see how you feel, notice things that come up in your body, and just write it down, okay? So miso is great. It draws toxins out of your body. It's warming, it's salty, it's an adaptogen. It's great for the kidneys. It's great for your adrenals. It's great for your spleen. So if you are about to eat like a big cold salad and you're like, oh my God, Karina told me not to eat cold, uncooked foods, and it's like December, have a little cup of miso or a little cup of bone broth, or at least some hot water with lemon in it before you eat your big cold salad that I told you not to eat in the middle of winter. Okay, because it warms up your spleen and it warms up your digestive process and your belly is going to be much happier. Okay. So miso, I told you how to do it. It's super simple. If you've never bought it before, it lives in the cold food sections next in that like vegan section that has like tofu and tempeh and sometimes pickles. And there's a bunch of different kinds. Just choose a kind that you feel drawn to. The mellow sweet miso is just that. It's sweeter, it's mellow. The darker stuff is earthier. You know, if you're a light beer drinker, go with a mellow. If you're a dark beer drinker, go with a dark. Put a teaspoon, put a tablespoon, you know, mix it with some warm water. Don't pour boiling water over it. It's going to kill the active ingredients. It's a ferment, right? It's been sitting for a while. So don't pour boiling water over it. Pour warm, you know, finger. You should be able to put your finger in it, and it shouldn't burn your finger, right? And you can add scallions to it. You can add a whole bunch of stuff to it, but I'm just keeping it really simple. I find it delicious just to drink as a tea, so that's how I do it. But chopped up scallions are really, really nice too. You can get a little fancy. You could add bok choy. You can add ginger. You can add sliced carrots. You can make a soup and then add a teaspoon or a tablespoon of miso to the soup. You can add it to taste. If you really like salty, if you're adrenally deficient, if your kidneys need help, you might be craving salt. And that's great. Eat salt. It's going to be helpful for you. You'll feel better. You'll feel like you have more energy afterwards because the salts, the healthy salts, especially like miso, is actually nourishing your kidneys. Eating a bag of potato chips will also help, but then there's like some side effects of eating a whole bag of potato chips. But you know, if you are noticing that you have salty cravings, it's usually linked to adrenal and kidney insufficiency. So. Bone broth we've talked about. Bone broth is excellent. You can add miso to your bone broth to make it taste better. Sometimes people don't like the taste of bone broth. It's too fatty, it's too meaty. So miso kind of helps to just blend that in. I gave you a few recipes for soups. I love these soups. They are just excellent. You know, in the world of Asian cooking, you can think about like a tom kha soup. Is really nice too if you like to cook and you want to kind of get creative. You can look up recipes for tom kha, but I just really like the kind of gingery chicken or lentil or seafood soups that can also have like cooked greens, that can also have scallions in it, that can also have turmeric, which is so excellent. And that can have some coconut milk. It's not like a super, super creamy curry coconut milk. I mean, you can do that, but just like, you know, a few tablespoons of coconut milk in the end, just make it taste so, so good. And these foods are just so helpful at the same thing. So they're building your spleen, they're tonifying your chi. They're uplifting you. They're securing your what we called essence in the body, so it's not like leaking out of the body. I mean, you know that feeling I talked about a couple of videos ago, that feeling when you drink like an ice cold smoothie and like you're like, oh my God, not only do I have the runs now, but I just feel like everything is like draining out of me. Pay attention to that feeling. I mean, it's not bad all the time to have a cold smoothie, but if you're trying to, if you know that, if you talk to me and you know that like your spleen and your digestive system and all that needs an uplift, if you feel like you run a little bit cold, if you feel like you're always craving salt, then these other foods that I'm talking about here, like these soups, are actually going to be what you need to like boost yourself and like tonify yourself. So check out those soups and make one. Choose one that sounds good to you, or find another one that you feel inspired by. I always feel like food has to start with inspiration, and that's where it's really going to last. So if you have like a cultural inspiration, if you're like, oh, I feel really, connected to the idea of food from Thailand or from Vietnam, or from your own culture. Maybe there is a French or there's an Italian soup or there's an African soup that you're like, oh my gosh, like I really just want to make that soup. I feel really connected to it. This is like the Jewish chicken soup phenomenon here. This is important, and most cultures do have a soup that like feels like this to us. It's so nurturing. Okay. So the last thing that I want to talk about is our emotions. So we talk a lot about in Chinese medicine about our emotions and their connections with different organ systems. So for example, anger is connected to the liver. So is irritability. So actually is depression. A lot of emotions are connected to the liver. Grief, melancholy, sadness is connected to the lungs. Fear is connected to the kidneys. Worry is connected to the spleen. Okay? Overexcitement, joy, excessive joy is connected to the heart. So when we are feeling these emotions all the time, those organ systems are going to start to get affected. Breast cancer. I always forget which one. One breast gets affected by grief and one breast gets affected by anger. And you can actually chart it out in people's case histories if you interview them and find out kind of what their history, their emotional history has been. And it's actually correlatory back to like left or right breast, sometimes both. So emotions take hold in our bodies. And that is why I talk so much about emotions in this work, because unfortunately, even though, the emotion itself isn't the problem, when it goes unacknowledged and stuffed for a long time over the course of years and decades, it actually manifests as disease. So, here's a few things that you can do. The first thing, and I find this so helpful and just so important, is that don't be afraid of the feelings that are coming up. Don't be afraid of emotions. It is so much better to feel the feeling. It takes about 90 seconds for that emotion to pass through your body. 90 seconds, okay? So it's gonna feel like shit sometimes at first. It's gonna feel like a shitstorm. Hold it out, just wait it out. A really great analogy or a visual that you can use here is just thinking about riding the wave to shore. You're on a surfboard, you're on a boogie board, you're on a little boat, and you're riding that wave. You eventually get to shore. Okay, those waves bring you to shore. Those waves are your emotions, and the beach is that safety, is that emotion moving through. Okay, so that's the first thing. Just feel it. Intense pain, intense grief, sadness, even this. I will sometimes work with people who have had such intense grief. I'm thinking right now of a woman who I worked with who lost her baby mid-pregnancy. I've worked with people who have had infant mortality. I've worked with people who have lost children. And so, some of the most heartbreaking situations you can be in. And what I notice in myself is that I feel, because I'm an empath, so that means that I feel a lot. I can feel their pain very easily. But it's also important for it not to take hold in my body, right? So I can feel that. I can feel that grief. I feel all that pain, and I just let it go through. I wait a minute or so, and it runs through naturally. It doesn't take hold in my body. Okay. And so this is the same for you. This is the same for, anything that comes up with your partner, with your children. This is great, 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 great when we're working with children. I use this actually a lot without even realizing it when I set boundaries with my children, because the way that I set boundaries in my family is that I say, I give the no, you cannot have the second cookie. And then they're like, and I move in and I hold them, and sometimes they struggle, and I actually have held them so they can't move. And I just wait it out. I wait it out. And so it's the same thing. It's the emotion usually moves through within about 90 seconds in my children too. So whether you're setting a boundary or whether you're feeling something really intense, maybe you're having something come up, maybe it's the anniversary of the death of a loved one, feeling, and just allowing it to move through you is so, so crucial. Okay, that was a little bit of a long explanation. The other thing I want to say is the reflection of what was my reaction to this situation. So say something big happens with the person you live with, your partner, your spouse, or somebody else that you live with. If you can't catch it in the moment, but you notice a little bit like, oh my gosh, I'm having a big reaction, or right after the person is like, hey, you had a really big reaction to that. That's a really great thing to look at. It's okay if, you messed up. It's okay if you had that big reaction. It might be a trigger. Triggers happen because usually of a past trauma, which we all have to varying degrees. Or an old belief that's maybe not serving you anymore. So the question being, what was my reaction to this situation? And is that how I want to react? Right? You can start to gauge if you start asking this question, was that a regular reaction, or was there something else going on there? And if you get that second response of if there's something else going on there, then that's when it's good to start looking at it. And that's kind of what we do with coaching is, we look at what is the belief that's getting you either triggered or not letting you move forward. And we help you change that belief, or you change that belief. I mean, I'm not doing anything. I'm just asking questions. Okay, so you have a couple tools there. Again, when we're thinking about Chinese medicine, this can be helpful. So I'm going to give you one more tool before I leave you today. This is going to sound weird, but I find this helpful. Angry feelings. Anger is there for a reason. Pay attention to your anger, especially for women. This is so, so, so important. Pay attention to your anger. For a lot of us, we have basically discredited the whole emotion of anger. It turns to sadness. It turns to martyrdom. And eventually it's going to turn to disease if you leave it unchecked. So please pay attention to your anger. For a lot of us, it might be the beginning of paying attention to it. And so you can journal about it. If you notice that angry spark in you, instead of repressing it, notice it and, write a little bit about what that feeling is. Actually, drawing out that feeling of anger can be incredibly, incredibly healing and helpful. And it's so important as women to pay attention to anger. Sadness is important too. So that grief, that sadness in the lungs, when we're talking about immunity, that is really important. So really actively looking at sadness in our life. And a lot of times with sadness, it can be so helpful just to feel it. A lot of times that's what it takes to kind of move it through. If we've cut grief short, if we haven't given it its due, sometimes that's when it really starts to take hold in the body. Things like irritability, that's very like livery. And so if you also have stuff like PMS, super common, you tend to be a little more irritable. You're a very livery person. You're a little fiery. The best thing you can do, you've heard me say this in the first video, and I say this a lot in my practice, is full body movement. Okay. And there's herbs too. And, you need to look at your anger and what your triggers are. Okay. This is so near and dear to me. I am such a livery person, and this was my main go-to for, like a couple of decades. It happened with my cycle, with my menstrual cycle. I had really, really difficult cycles. It happened with some infertility. It's happened with my emotions, with my sensuality. So it's like some pelvic floor stuff. Liver. So the liver channel in Chinese medicine wraps around the genitalia and ends right under our breasts, in that diaphragm area. So you will hear me talk more about the liver. But for this, just know that the liver is inherently connected to our emotions. It wants to be free and breezy. It wants to be easy. And so dancing, biking, jogging, if you like it, swimming, running around with your kids help to move your liver qi. And that's important because it moves the flow of emotions in your body instead of them getting stuck and stagnating and sticking around in your body and causing irritability and causing PMS and causing all this stuff that you don't want. Okay, so if you need one more excuse to like move your body and like put on some music and dance, then that is it. Okay, loves. We have talked about a lot. This is a lot of, it's a lot all at once. Go back over these videos, watch them again. Ask me any questions you want. Anything is up for grabs. If you want a more detailed approach, if you want one-on-one coaching, let me know. I do that. At the end of August, I have a 12-week group coaching program happening every week. We will meet as a group on a live call. That will be happening beginning August 21st. So there are options moving forward. This is just the beginning. Have fun with this information. Try this stuff out. Be curious. Be experimental. Let me know in the group what you're trying. And don't forget to always, always, always just love and take care of yourself and mother yourself first. Okay, bye.